Amon from Kenya sold his kidney.
Nasikia vibaya sana. Ni kama najichokia.
Amon was in desperate need of money when he got a promising offer. $6,000 for a part of his body from a company that operates worldwide, Mediheal.
The Independent Investigative Committee on Tissue and Organ Transplant Services has recommended an immediate investigation and criminal charges against Swarup Mishra, founder and owner of Mediheal Group of Hospitals, for alleged involvement in organ trafficking linked to a kidney transplant scandal at the hospital. In a damning report presented to Health Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale today, the 13-member team exposed massive irregularities pointing to an international organ harvesting syndicate. Emmanuel Toh with the details.
Niliona mambo ya akili. Inasemekana ya kwamba ndugu yetu Misha ama hospitali ya Mediheal ilikuwa inafanya kazi ya kuuza kidney cha watoto wetu.
In recent years, Mediheal Group of Hospitals, one of Kenya's most prominent private healthcare chains, has found itself at the center of a deeply disturbing scandal involving allegations of illegal organ harvesting and human trafficking. At the heart of controversy are claims that the hospital facilitated black market for kidneys, using poor and vulnerable Kenyan citizens as living donors for wealthy foreign clients. The scandal, which began as whispers and rumors, exploded into national concerns after multiple investigative reports, whistleblowers' testimonies, and government probes uncovered what appeared to be a systematic exploitation of legal loopholes and human suffering. The core allegation is that Mediheal operated as a hub for transplant tourism, where foreign patients, many from Israel, India, and even parts of Europe, flew into Kenya and underwent kidney transplant surgeries using organs sourced from desperate, impoverished locals. These donors were allegedly recruited by middlemen or brokers operating in low-income settlements across Nairobi, Eldoret, and Mombasa. Lured by promises of quick cash, some as little as 100,000 Kenyan shillings, these individuals were reportedly coerced or misled into donating one of their kidneys under the guise of noble cause or a family-based donation. To bypass Kenyan legal restrictions, where organ donation is permitted only between close relatives, donors and recipients were allegedly coached to sign affidavits claiming fictitious relationship. In many cases, a donor would suddenly become a cousin or a nephew of a foreign recipient they had never met. Reports from investigative journalists reveal that in some instances, donors were issued fake identification documents with their names and nationalities altered to disguise the true nature of the transaction.
Sabine from Germany bought a kidney in Kenya.
Ja, da war ich jetzt bin ich vielleicht dann schon egoistisch, weil ich wollte halt diese Niere und Hauptsache der Vertrag passt.
She had needed a new kidney for years.
Some Kenyan donors were reportedly given Somali names or identities to obscure the origin and make it harder to trace the operations back to Mediheal or its partners. Whistleblowers' testimony further revealed that many of these surgeries took place in Mediheal facilities in Eldoret and Parklands. In several cases, the hospital facilitated international travel, flying both donors and recipients to India, where their surgeries were performed under the guise of medical tourism. Upon returning, some donors claimed they were abandoned with no post-operative care or psychological support. Others alleged that the money promised to them was either reduced dramatically or never paid at all. The situation grew even more troubling when a report by international watchdogs flagged inconsistency in transplant documents submitted to Israeli healthcare authorities. The documents listed Kenyan donors as relatives of the recipients, but background checks showed no familial ties whatsoever. The revelation prompted the Israeli Transplantation Society to raise a red flag, prompting scrutiny into how the surgeries were being arranged and by whom. As scrutiny mounted, Kenya's Ministry of Health was forced to take action. In early 2025, Health Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale ordered the immediate suspension of all kidney transplants procedures at Mediheal Hospital pending a full audit. A special task force was assembled to review over 370 transplant cases conducted by Mediheal between 2019 and 2023. Their preliminary findings reportedly contained clear indicators of human trafficking and consent violation, but in the shocking turn, the final report released to the public had all such references scrubbed. Multiple insiders later confirmed that the report was doctored and that senior Ministry of Health officials had interfered to protect powerful individuals tied to the scandal. Further allegations emerged around Mediheal use of foreign doctors, some of whom had previously been barred from practicing medicine in their home countries such as Pakistan or India. These doctors, often recruited without proper vetting, were allegedly flown into Kenya to perform high-risk surgeries with minimal oversight. Critics argue that Kenya's lack of enforcement around foreign medical licensing allowed Mediheal to operate in legal gray zone where ethical boundaries were routinely crossed. To make matters worse, it became apparent that Kenya's legal framework governing organ donation, outlined in the Health Act of 2017, had never been fully operationalized. With no robust national registry for transplants, no central database of donors and recipients, and no strict monitoring system in place, private hospitals like Mediheal were able to exploit gaps in the law to carry out questionable surgeries with little accountability. As allegations against Mediheal Hospital gained traction, the Kenyan government was forced to respond amid mounting pressure from the public, civil society, and international observers. What began as a few whistleblowers speaking out quickly snowballed into a full-blown national scandal, one that questioned the integrity of Kenya's healthcare system and the government's willingness to protect its most vulnerable citizens. The first major move came in April 2025 when Health Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale ordered the immediate suspension of all kidney transplant procedures at Mediheal facilities across the country. This decision came after new evidence surfaced suggesting that previous investigations into the hospital activities had been deliberately manipulated to cover up human trafficking and organ harvesting practices. In his statement, CS Duale admitted that an earlier report compiled in 2023 by a ministry-appointed task force had been massively doctored before its public release, with crucial findings redacted to protect powerful individuals implicated in the scandal. The Ministry of Health immediately formed a new independent expert committee to conduct a fresh audit of all kidney transplant operations performed at Mediheal between 2019 and 2024. This committee was tasked with verifying donor-recipient relationships, examining medical consent procedures, and evaluating compliances with both local and international transplant laws. The audit was also meant to investigate the hospital affiliations with foreign medical practitioners and to determine whether Mediheal had become a hub for international organ trafficking syndicates. In a show of renewed seriousness, the Ministry of Health also froze licensing for foreign transplant surgeons, except those from countries in East African Community. This move followed revelation that some of the doctors involved in Mediheal transplant operation had questionable professional histories, including being banned from practicing in their home countries. The Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council (KMPDC) had also ordered to conduct a full vetting and re-registration of all foreign specialists practicing in the country. Simultaneously, the Parliamentary Health Committee launched its own 80-day public inquiry into the scandal. Chaired by health sector MPs and involving civil society observers, the inquiry called for public submissions from whistleblowers, medical experts, victims, and even Mediheal representatives. These sessions were broadcasted live on national television, exposing deeply emotional testimonies from young Kenyan men who described being misled into donating kidneys under false pretenses. Some revealed they were offered jobs or motorcycles in exchange for an organ, only to be discarded with minimal medical care once the surgery was done. Others shared how they were flown to India by agents of the hospital, operated on, and returned home without follow-up treatment and counseling. One particularly damning revelation emerged during a committee hearing in May 2025 when it disclosed that Mediheal had submitted transplant documentation to the Israeli Ministry of Health claiming donor-recipient relationships that were later proven false. This prompted the Israeli Transplantation Society to alert Kenya's authorities, raising serious concerns about Kenya's role in an international black market of human organs. The parliamentary committee vowed to examine these cross-border activities, stating that Kenya will not allow itself to become a transit hub for body parts. In response to the scale of the scandal, the Kenyan government also began working with international organizations, including Interpol and the World Health Organization, to trace the global network possibly involved in the trafficking ring. These collaborations are aimed at identifying the financier, brokers, and offshore medical facilities that have colluded with Mediheal to exploit Kenya's regulatory gaps. Meanwhile, civil society organizations and human rights watchdogs have called for criminal prosecution of Mediheal's top executives, the brokers who recruited donors, and the Ministry of Health officials who allegedly tampered with the 2023 investigative reports. Some activities are also demanding reparations for victims, many of whom now suffer from long-term health complications and psychological trauma. Despite the serious steps taken, critics argue that the government's response is still reactive rather than proactive, and that deep reforms are needed to prevent future abuses. Kenya's 2017 Health Act provides a legal foundation for organ transplantation, but the lack of fully functional national transplant registry, weak enforcement of donor consent laws, and ministry oversight of provided hospitals have left the system dangerously vulnerable to exploitation. As the investigation continues, one thing is clear: the Mediheal scandal has exposed systematic failures at the intersection of healthcare, law, and human rights. Whether the government will follow through with a genuine reform or allow political interference to derail accountability remains to be seen. The Mediheal organ trafficking scandal is more than just a story about one hospital's alleged wrongdoing. It's a mirror held up to a broken system. At its core, this scandal reveals how deeply entrenched poverty, weak regulations, and institutional silence can create the perfect environment for medical exploitation. It shows us that when oversight is lax and profit becomes the primary motive, human lives, especially the poor, become commodities. In Kenya, thousands live with end-stage kidney failure, yet only a handful can access transplants legally. The wait lists are long, the cost is high, and the infrastructure underfunded. This scarcity has opened the door to underground solutions, where desperation is weaponized. Poor Kenyans, eager for quick cash or manipulated by brokers, are drawn into a system where the bodies are viewed as assets to be harvested, not lives to be protected. The scandal also highlights the dangerous loopholes in Kenya's health system. Despite the Health Act of 2017 providing a framework for organ transplantation, the actual enforcement has been inconsistent. No centralized transplant registry, no strict monitoring of donor consent process, no real-time audit of private hospital activities. In that vacuum, facilities like Mediheal could operate unchecked, protected by the bureaucracy and political influence. Even more alarming is the erosion of accountability at the top level of the government. That a critical investigative report was allegedly edited, scrubbing out clear signs of trafficking, suggests systematic rot. If senior officials can silence truth to shield elite interests, then justice becomes selective and public trust crumbles. And beyond Kenya, this scandal exposes a global crisis. Wealthier patients from West or Middle East flying to the global South to purchase organs, often from people with no real understanding of the long-term medical consequences. It's a modern form of medical colonialism where the poor are caved upon to prolong the lives of the rich. Ultimately, the Mediheal case is a chilling reminder: without strong institutions, vulnerable people will always be at risk. If this moment isn't met with serious reform, real transparency, tough regulations, and victim support, then the cycle will simply continue. Different hospitals, different donors, same betrayal.